seen and has actually been to physical therapy a couple of times with not stellar success, right? Okay, let me fix this for you. Is that better? Or is that too much in your neck?
It's a little much.
So
You were going to say perfect no matter what. That's so if we look at his back, what do you see? Like, does it?
The nose are down.
Okay, so we identify the curves of the back. If it's a C curve to the back, it's a lordosis. So we would expect a cervical lordosis and a lumbar lordosis. If it's a C this way, that's going to be a kyphosis. And we would expect the thoracic spine to have a kyphosis. Ben wins. That's a really big kyphosis, okay? And what you'll also see, those curves should be, and you've all looked at each other's backs, but probably haven't looked at them. You've probably been looking, at the bark of the trees and not the forest. Those curves should be very graceful, going from lordosis to kyphosis to lordosis. And so for me, a red flag, anywhere that I see where the spine is straight, that's like, rah, rah, rah. And he's got a really straight section in here, right? The other thing is, this should be a fairly comfortable position. He's supported, he should be relaxed. Yeah. Okay? So even in a resting position, his muscles are in this chronic hypertonic state. He's a little bit looser on this side, although not a whole lot right there. So those are all things that I'm appreciating just by looking at him without even touching his back, other than pointing to be how tight he is. So just by observing his posture in this way, I would want to concentrate on evaluating his spine here. And then, Corey, I could never do that to you, right? Like just circle. Corey's a little ticklish over there. So. That does bring up the point that if someone is ticklish, you actually don't want to go to a lighter touch. You want to go to a firmer touch. Okay, a firmer touch will help that person a little bit more. Some people, like when we get to the feet, it'll just be a frenzy in here. Okay, especially when you do the lumbricals and interosseae of the toes. There's just no way. So his low back also looks okay. So I would concentrate on this area and this area. So I just wanted to point out someone who maybe has something that looks a little bit atypical from what you all have been seeing. You're going to have a whole semester on how to treat the spine. But because I like the spine so much, I couldn't resist at least just pointing out some things that you might observe. Now, the other little pearl I'm going to give you because I can't help it. If I see these multiple areas, you always want a correctly moving base and then you work up. So even if someone came to me with a cervical problem, I would start with the pelvis to just make sure the pelvis was okay and work my way all the way up to the head. Because it could be that what's going on here is a compensation for something that's going on down there. All right? So even though I've said that it's his upper and mid-thoracic that really are wonky, I would start down here, although his lumbar spine looks okay. Ben, I'm going to have you get in that Sphinx position again, so up on your elbows, resting your chin in your hands. Okay? So in this position, we should see a beautiful kind of ski slope curve. Okay? So in the rest of you, you would expect this kyphosis to reverse, and you'd have this nice, long, single lordosis along the entire spine. Ben doesn't have that, right? So he's got a ski jump in his hill, and it stops right there. And what I can tell you from when Dylan and I were taking a look at him, Dylan pointed it out, and I just confirmed.
You're right.
From here down, he moves pretty well, but from here up, he moves pretty poorly. Okay? Right? That's what you got?
Oh, yeah.
So when we talk about palpating transverse processes, I am going to be in here like this, and I'm going to be looking to see if my thumbs are different this way, because that's telling me if the entire segment is rotated. Okay, so if I have a segment that's like this, it's going to be rotated right because the front face of that vertebra is going to the right. If it's like this, it's rotated left. And so I can go through and check that out. Now, all of you should try this position just so that you can see how Ben's back looks different than your other back. So you want to be able to palpate transverse processes with the person flat, with the person in this position, which I call the Sphinx position. I'm sure others do as well. And also in sitting and then slouched over. Okay? Again, way advanced beyond the first month of school. But just, I wanted you to have an appreciation of how you might look for those structures. Okay? All right, go ahead and lie flat for me. So we're going to move on to the pelvic structures, and honestly, quite selfishly, I wanted Ben up here because I'm interested. We spent a little bit of time looking here, so I'm really interested to see what the pelvis looks like. So that's why I asked him to come up. It's just to satisfy my curiosity. So for the sacrum, if you look at the picture, we're going to be looking at the base of the sacrum, which is actually the top part, and then the angle. Okay, so if you can see where the edges of the sacrum come down and then they start to point towards the coccyx, can everyone see that point? That's the sacral angle. I don't remember, maybe it was Emma. The sacrum can rotate between the two sacroiliac joints, and it actually doesn't rotate like this. It rotates on an axis like this or an axis like that. Okay? So in order to figure out if it's rotated in any way, you need to be able to palpate in those four areas. Okay? So I come in, I find the iliac crest. Now posteriorly, just like anteriorly, when I found the iliac crest, my thumbs fell into the ASIS. If I have my hands here, they're going to fall into the PSIS. Posterior superior iliac spine. I once again will go inferior and pull up because the PSIS itself is going to be quite broad, and if I'm looking for symmetry, I want to have a consistent landmark. Okay? Now, Dylan, I'm sure you'll find this later. His right is much shallower than his left. Okay? So you check it for me, make sure I'm right.
I got you.
Okay. Okay. Now, if I go medially from the PSISs, I'm going to be on the sacral base. Ben, are you doing okay? Mm-hmm. Now, I'm going to follow the borders of the sacrum down until it starts to curve in, and then I'm going to be on his sacral angles bilaterally, and he is more posterior on his left. Okay. So my guess is he's got a torsion of his sacrum too. So before I could treat this, I would have to treat this. Has anyone worked with your pelvis when you've been in PT before? Okay. All right. Now, one of the other reasons why you might palpate the sacrum is the piriformis is going to attach right to the border of the sacrum, and so you may want to palpate along there. The piriformis goes from the sacrum over to the greater trochanter, and the sciatic nerve may or may not travel through the piriformis, so that's going to be a muscle that's implicated for sciatica. Okay, so the piriformis might be an important muscle to palpate. All right, can you get me on my next one? Okay, so we talked about PSIS. Ischial tuberosity, other people call it the sit bones. So those are the bones you're sitting on. Okay, so here you're going to come down to the gluteal folds and you're going to press up onto those ischial tuberosities. Okay, and you can see I've got his pelvis when I push. If I were in soft tissue and I would do that, I wouldn't have his whole body, but when I do this, I'm on his ischial tuberosities. There is a ligament called the sacrotuberous ligament that goes from the ischial tuberosity to the sacrum, okay? And it's big like a smoothie straw, okay? So those bigger, wider straws. And it's going from here to here. So we're going to palpate cross fiber, and it's going to be deep. Okay. The Sacral Tuberous ligament. The Ischial Tuberosity to the sacrum. Okay. If he had something going on with his ilia, so similar to what we saw with Emma, where it looked like maybe one of her ilia was differently oriented than her other one, you would see that in the Ischial Tuberosities as well. Okay, because that's a single bone on either side. So that's another landmark you can check. You'd also see it in the PSISs. Now we have another ligament. It's really a thickened band of fascia. The iliolumbar ligament is going to go from the iliac crest posteriorly to the lumbar spine. Now you also have the thoracolumbar fascia. The thoracolumbar fascia, if you remember like your anatomy pictures of the latissimus dorsi, comes off the thoracolumbar fascia. The iliolumbar ligaments are going to be deep to that thoracolumbar fascia, and they are traveling this way. So to palpate cross fiber, I'm going this way. And again, you want to be able to characterize the tension or potentially the differences in tension from the left and right sides, because it may tell you something about the orientation of the ilium.
So what direction are you?
The ligaments go like this.
Okay.
So I'm going to be palpating this way.
Okay.
So always perpendicularly. Iliolumbar ligament. Now the last structure is the greater sciatic notch. So if we look here, this is it. Okay? And the sciatic nerve will be traveling through there. So I like to do it in sideline, but the last couple of years the students have not liked to do it in sideline because there's too much tension there. So in prone, you find the border of the sacrum and you simply come over laterally into right in the middle of the gluteal muscles. And you can follow the rim of the notch. Now, if someone has sciatica, that's going to reproduce their symptoms. Okay? To get to the notch, I'm going through the gluteus maximus, okay, potentially through the piriformis. Okay, so it's a pretty deep structure. Now, if we were going to palpate, we've got the piriformis that goes this way and the glute max that goes that way for fiber orientation. So what would be one way to palpate the glute max versus the piriformis?
The action?
So you could have them do the action. The piriformis is a rotator. Go ahead and relax your foot. So I could have him resist rotation here. Okay. We could have him lift his leg to get his gluteus maximus to activate. So they have very different actions. The fiber orientation is also perpendicular, and the depth is different. The glute max is more superficial to the piriformis. So if I was going to palpate glute max, I would go cross fiber and I would have my hands fairly parallel to the skin. Okay? If I was going to palpate piriformis, my fingers would come up and I would go cross fiber. Okay? All right. Do you have anything on the next one? All right. Fabulous. Okay. So what you have to palpate is iliac crest, PSIS. Come in off the PSIS and you're on the sacral base. Palpate the sacral base down and you will be on the sacral angles. The coccyx is going to be right in the middle. Some of you are grossed out about putting your fingers in people's mouths for TMJ. Coccyx manipulation is a whole nother game, which some PTs do. I have not ever. Have you?
I filled in for somebody who did do it.
Yeah.
And he had it on there for me to do, and I couldn't get myself to do it. It wasn't trained in it.
Well, that's what I was just gonna say. It wouldn't be safe for anybody for me to do it. So there is actually an intraanal mobilization of the coccyx. So again, for postpartum moms, sometimes the coccyx can become dislocated, and they'll have intractable pain. And the only way to get that pain gone is for someone to go in and either manipulate it or mobilize it. And so it's a very good skill to have that I don't have. So people who work in women's health, that's quite frequent. I had a cousin who went months and months with pain and finally found a PT who would do that for her, and she was better within weeks. So it really is important to be able to do that. So even if you're not comfortable, we're not going to practice. If you're not comfortable, you need to at least be able to palpate the coccyx so that you know if it's deviated to the left or the right or tucked in. Okay? Then the ischial tuberosities, and then from there you go from the sacral angle to the ischial tuberosity for the sacral tuberous ligament. The sciatic notch. Okay? And then we had our iliolumbar ligaments that run that way, so we're going to palpate this way. And then I talked about glute max versus piriformis, which may actually be more of the hip stuff. Okay? So I think that covers it. Can you put the other slide up? Because